What up YouTube, TK here, and today we're talking about everyone's favorite robot explorer, SOLARBOI. He was my robot best friend, and I loved working with him and exploring the Australian outback together. Along the way, we had wild adventures, made new friends, and we stuck it out through thick and thin. Now, SOLARBOI has come home, and he's evolving into a new robot. He goes by Mowerboi now, and he's starting to think for himself, but most of all, he's keen to get stuck into the yard work. The basic idea is to make Mowerboi into an autonomous lawnmower. I've got some big ideas with regards to autonomy, but first I have to actually give Mowerboi a way to cut the lawn. The first step was to wire up an extra speed controller and motor to serve as the actual grass cutting head. My first attempt fitted a 3D printed plastic blade to an old 80-turn brush DC motor, and I thought this would be more than enough. It did okay at first, but it quickly got bogged down and would stop when it was confronted by even slightly thicker grass. This bench test shows the problem. Feeding the grass in slowly works great. However, when it was actually fitted to Mowerboi, the robot was moving too quickly through the grass and the cutting blade would slow to a stop when it got to the thicker sections. Thus, I set about upgrading, switching to a more powerful 35-turn motor instead. This thing howled like a banshee, and paired with a sharper blade, it actually did a passable job of cutting the grass. It wasn't a clean cut, and it still took several passes to do a given area, but it showed I was moving in the right direction. In general, even if Mowerboi is terrible at cutting grass, I can just program him to do multiple passes of the lawn a few times a week, and it will trim the grass down nicely. The benefit is that having an autonomous robot doing the job means you don't really care if it takes 2 or 3 times as long. However, I still wanted the power to deal with longer grass where needed. Okay, so initial testing's gone okay. With the 35-turn motor in the front, this thing is actually strong enough to cut grass, even just with a thin ABS plastic 3D printed blade. However, the thin ABS 3D printed blade did break after a while. I have a stronger design already that I can use, so that's not a big problem. The other problem is the motor mount has, you can't quite see it here, but it's failed. The motor is actually twisting in the mount, and it's not supposed to, there you go, it's not supposed to do that. Ah! Just like the old scooter video, I just burned myself. Ow, God, that's hot! It's very hot. I probably actually want to swap that brush motor for something even more powerful, maybe a brushless setup. I got the ESC here, so it shouldn't be too hard to change, but that motor, does a better job than the 80-turn I tried earlier. Can actually cut the grass. These blades can cut the grass, but neither is quite powerful enough or has quite the longevity I'm looking for, so more work to be done. But regardless, you know, we have some progress, and this is cutting very long grass. I then decided to try an improved blade design, which fitted metal carpet cutting blades to the cutting head. It felt dangerous having all those bolts and blades on there, but it also did a better job of cutting the grass. I felt like I should probably put a shroud on this for safety's sake, but I was kind of in a hurry and I pushed on regardless. It was around this time I realized that if Mowerboi was going to be truly capable, he needed to take it slow. Normally when you mow the lawn, you go at a nice steady walking pace. However, Mowerboi wasn't really capable of crawling like that as he didn't have the low down torque necessary. To solve this problem, I set about designing a 2.75 to 1 reduction gearbox to give Mowerboi more torque for crawling along slowly. It was insanely difficult to cram the extra gears into Mowerboi, and it took plenty of printing, reprinting, and cutting to get it all to fit. The difficulty of this mod is why I never attempted it during the SOLARBOI era, and I wish I had, because he could always use more torque and he was always getting stuck in soft ground. Regardless, it was difficult as hell, and I was only able to actually attempt this because I had a 3D printer now. I set about reassembling the robot and added in an even more powerful 14-turn motor to the cutting head this time. Taking the robot apart and putting it back together takes absolutely forever, but I was super excited as to the possibilities. If Mowerboi could learn to tread slowly, the cutting head would do a much better job on the grass, even if it grew thick and tall. Plus, with the more powerful motor, it should be absolutely unbeatable when it comes to cutting grass. After putting everything back together, I went outside to test and I was absolutely psyched. But alas, my lust for power would be my downfall. That could have killed me. The more powerful motor on the cutting head caused the 3D printed blade to snap at high RPM, flinging metal blades across the yard. After quickly patting myself down and verifying I wasn't bleeding out, I hunted the pieces down to no avail. I only found a small chunk many meters from the bot. The rest of the blade had disappeared off into the yard somewhere. I was incredibly glad I hadn't been hurt. Remember when I said I should have put a shroud on the mower blade? I absolutely should have. I was super glad that I didn't take one of those carpet blades to the neck, and I resolved to fix this immediately when I put the mower back together. As for the gearbox, this was a little more promising. Mowerboi could indeed crawl, and I was most excited. However, the gearbox quickly fell apart as I'd forgotten to glue some of the parts together during assembly. I endeavoured to return to the drawing board, as a slow mower with the torque of a rock crawler would be ideal for the difficult grassy terrain. Meanwhile, I also realised that Mowerboi needed some cosmetic upgrades. No longer skulking around in the bush meant that his Outback camouflage paint scheme was now out of date. Instead, I decided to fit my boy with a dope body kit. I drew inspiration equal parts from the world of construction equipment and the world of lurid drift car paint schemes. Yeah, we're talking fluorescent yellow body panels and eye-searing fluoro pink wheels. I could not be more in love with this design. Now, you might wonder why I chose the stripes, and I'll tell you why. It's because they're really easy to draw. That's why. I set about fitting the body kit along with a retooled gearbox. I also fixed up the cutting head with a new plastic-only blade because I was, at this point, pretty much too scared of the metal one for a while. I also put on a shroud to keep me safe from any future shrapnel generation events. In this configuration as it stands, Mowerboi is able to cut the grass, albeit with a little less efficiency than his steel-bladed iteration. The body kit looks a treat, and it makes him far easier to spot out on the lawn. This is great, as Mowerboi not only looks fresh as hell, but he's also more visible from a safety perspective, which is really important if anyone else happens to be wandering around the backyard. As for the gearbox, I redesigned it to a 1.7:1 reduction ratio, hoping that if I added a few teeth to the gearbox and changed a few design parameters, the whole thing would work a lot better. It did work well going forwards, and then it completely failed going in reverse. And within a couple of minutes, it had stripped its teeth entirely or otherwise stopped working. Okay, so the gearbox doesn't work in reverse. I've clearly still got some work to do there, and I can't wait to actually rip into the gearbox to see what went wrong. I may redesign the gearbox, or I may just give up on that path and instead go to a torquier motor. We'll see what happens there, because I really do love the idea of Mowerboi being able to crawl along slowly through the grass. Regardless, Mowerboi is looking sharper than ever, and with some more work, he should be cutting sharper than ever too, real soon. Couple that with some GPS upgrades and fully autonomous code, and I'm gonna have one heck of a robot lawnmower on my hands. I absolutely can't wait. Stay tuned, TK out.